Santa Fe Rules by Stuart Woods, performed by Tony Roberts. Wolf Willett remembered too late that Flaps had always had a cold nose. Now it found the back of his neck, and with a girlish shriek, Wolf sat bolt upright in bed and regarded her with bleary eyes. There was only a faint glow of daylight from outside. "Got me again, didn't you?" he said to her. Flaps grinned. This grin had always been one of her great charms, and it did not fail to do its work now. Wolf melted. "Time to get up, huh?" Flaps laid her head in his lap and grinned again, looking up at him with big brown eyes. "Right now?" he asked, teasing her. "Right now," she replied, thumping her tail against the bed for emphasis. All right," he moaned and swung his legs over the side of the bed. Flaps celebrated her triumph with a little golden retriever dance, throwing in a couple of squeals of happiness. Flaps waited impatiently for him to get coffee started, then watched, rapt, as he poured her a dish of dry dog food. Wolf got an English muffin into the toaster and rounded up butter and jam. He drank from a plastic container of fresh orange juice. "Want to go out now?" he asked her. To his surprise, she trotted across the room and scratched on the door that led to the guest wing of the house. "That's not the back door, dummy," he railed at her, shaking his head. "It's this way, remember? The way you've gone out every day of your life." She scratched on the guest wing door again. Wolf kept that part of the house closed and unheated until a guest arrived. "I think you must be as hungover as I am this morning." He slapped his thigh and whistled softly. Reluctantly, Flaps followed him to the outside kitchen door, and when he opened it, bounded outside. Wolf left her to roam the hillside, sniffing for coyote markings among the pinyons, and returned to his breakfast. He ate slowly and with a nearly blank mind. He did not think of the night before, did not try to remember what he drank, did not think of anything much until he remembered that he had to go to Los Angeles this morning. He looked at the clock on the microwave, just after 7. He calculated the time to the airport, time for the trip, time for the ride to the office. He'd be in L.A. by 11, time for a sandwich at his desk before his meeting at 2. It was Tuesday. He'd get 6 or 7 hours of work in with the editor today and a full day tomorrow. Then on Thursday he and Julia would have Thanksgiving dinner with their friends the Carmichaels. Flaps, her ablutions completed and her survey of the property concluded, scratched on the back door. He let her in, and she went straight to her cedar shavings bed and settled in for her morning nap. She was as much a creature of habit as he. "Listen, you," Wolf said, shaking a finger at her. "I'm leaving Maria a note telling her you've already been fed, so don't try and get another breakfast out of her, you hear?" Flaps looked suitably guilty, but she knew very well she'd be fed again by the housekeeper, who melted at the sight of her. "Be good," he called out to her as he left by the kitchen door, "and don't eat the mailman." He opened the garage door, tossed his blazer onto the passenger seat of the Porsche cabriolet, then eased into the car. There was little traffic at this hour of the morning, and Santa Fe looked beautiful with the low sunlight on the adobe houses and shops. Everything was adobe in Santa Fe. Wolf always felt grateful that he had chosen Santa Fe as a second home instead of Aspen or one of the other movie colony favorites. It was harder to get to from L.A., but that kept out the riffraff, and anyway, he had his own airplane to get him there and back faster than the airlines could. Never mind that Julia didn't like the single-engine airplane and usually insisted on taking the airlines when she couldn't hop a ride on somebody's jet. He liked flying alone. Today he would think about L.A. Days, the latest Wolf Willett production, written and directed, as usual, by Jack Tinney. The film wasn't right yet, and since shooting had ended and the sets had been struck, it was going to have to be fixed in the editing, as it nearly always was with Jack's films. The airplane was a Beechcraft Bonanza, a 6-passenger retractable with a 300-horsepower turbocharged engine. He'd owned it for 3 years and had nearly 600 hours as pilot in command. It would do 200 knots at 75,000 feet, and Wolf wore the aircraft like a glove. Once airborne, he called Albuquerque Center on the radio and received his clearance. He was cleared as filed direct Grand Canyon, direct Santa Monica, though he knew that when he approached L.A. airspace, they'd vector him all over the place in order to sequence traffic for Santa Monica and keep it clear of Los Angeles International. When the plane reached its assigned altitude of 12,000 feet and was automatically leveled off by its autopilot, he leaned the fuel mixture, ran through the cruise checklist, then relaxed. He switched on the CD player and punched in a Harry Connick Jr. album. He hummed along with It Had to Be You and let his mind drift. He was still curiously unable, or unwilling, to recall the past evening. After being discharged from the Navy, Wolf had traveled to L.A. and began looking for a job in a law firm while studying for the state's bar examination. Some years later, after Wolf had risen to head the William Morris Legal Department, able seaman Jack Tinney, an old Navy buddy, appeared in his office with 4 cans of film under his arm. Using Navy equipment and studio space, he had shot a film of his own, and when Wolf had run it in the William Morris screening room, he had thought it rough, but the funniest thing he'd seen in years. Wolf had rented a cutting room, and together the 2 men had gotten it into shape. Wolf played jazz piano, and he and some musician friends, with whom he jammed once a week at a Santa Monica bar, had recorded a soundtrack, and after months of work they had found themselves with a completed feature film. Wolf had then taken the biggest risk of his life. He went to his patron, the senior vice president, and resigned from his job. Then he hired the man as his and Jack's agent and dragged him down to the screening room to see Rough Water, as they had named the film. Their new agent had loved it. Within a week, they had nailed down a distribution deal at Centurion, one of the big studios, and within a year, Wolf and Jack had each earned better than $500,000. The film was still making money on late-night television and video rentals. 25 years and 18 films later, Wolf Willett and Jack Tinney were still in business together. Jack wrote and directed the movies, and Wolf, their agent having died 15 years before, produced, negotiated contracts, and oversaw every aspect of production. They had an in-house production deal with Centurion, and Jack had long been established as the Woody Allen of the West Coast. All this had earned Wolf a house in Bel Air, another in Santa Fe, a nice little airplane, and the assorted cars, boats, pools, and tennis courts that went with a 7-figure income. He'd even managed to put away something for his old age, which wasn't as far away as it used to be. Wolf was brought abruptly back to the present by a red light on the instrument panel before him. Red lights were not good. This one said alternator failure. He switched on the backup generator. Nothing happened. Backup generator failure. He started turning off electrical gear and consult his chart. He'd never make it to L.A. on battery power, and he didn't want to fly in L.A. airspace without radios. Grand Canyon Airport looked good for repairs. Wolf switched off the autopilot and began hand-flying the airplane. The eastern end of the Grand Canyon was in sight when the instrument panel went dark. "Shit!" Wolf yelled. He tried switching things on and off, but nothing worked. The battery was too low to operate anything. He unearthed a small handheld radio, found the adapter wires that allowed him to plug his headset into it, turned it on, and tuned to the Grand Canyon control tower frequency. "Grand Canyon, November 1, 2, 3, Tango Foxtrot. Aircraft calling Grand Canyon. Please say again. Your transmission is weak." Shit again. His handheld batteries were nearly dead, too. "Grand Canyon," he said, enunciating carefully. "November 1, 2, 3, Tango Foxtrot. I am a Bonanza B-36. Estimate 15 miles east of the airport. I have electrical failure and am using a handheld radio. Roger, November 123, Tango Foxtrot. Runway 26 is active. Wind is 270 at 8. You're number 2 behind a Grand Canyon Airways twin, now on final. With no flaps to slow him, Wolf had to make a fast approach. But there was plenty of runway length, and he got the airplane down smoothly. He cleared the runway and taxied to the maintenance hangar. "Well," said the shop foreman, wiping his brow, "you got a dead alternator there, all right. Dead standby, too. I haven't got either in my stock." "How soon can you get replacements? Can't you call the manufacturer and get the parts overnighted in?" "Tomorrow's Thanksgiving," the foreman said. "I'll call today, but FedEx won't deliver till Friday." "This is Tuesday," Wolf said, relieved that the man had got his days wrong. "Thanksgiving isn't until day after tomorrow. You can have the parts here tomorrow, and I can be on my way." The foreman turned to the mechanic waiting beside the airplane. "What's today, Charlie?" "Wednesday," the man replied. "Thanksgiving's tomorrow," the foreman said to Wolf. No. Wolf looked at the day and date displayed on his wristwatch. He stopped and stared at his wristwatch. "That can't be," he said, shaking his head. "Sure can, Mr. Willett. It's Wednesday and tomorrow's Thanksgiving. I can have the parts here by 10:30 Friday morning, and we'll have them installed by early afternoon." Wolf rubbed his forehead. Something was terribly wrong here. "Okay. Where can I get a room?" "Try the lodge. Rent yourself a car at the terminal over there and follow the signs. It's real nice, and they won't be full this time of year." Try as he might, Wolf could not remember the past 24 hours. He remembered going to bed, but that must have been on Monday. He picked up the Tucson newspaper that came with the room and checked the date to be sure. Wednesday. He had lost a day out of his life, and it wasn't the first time. Wolf woke up the next morning feeling horny and reached for Julia. She was not there, of course. She was in L.A. At least, he thought she was. He had called a dozen times and gotten only his own recording. He had rung Jack's house, too, and gotten no answer. He and Julia had been married less than a year. It was a second marriage for him. He had been widowed for more than 20 years, but the first for her. She was 26 at the time, and an actress. The marriage had exceeded his expectations. Julia was wonderful company, and she had revived his nearly dormant sex life. Downstairs at the lodge, he asked for a New York Times. "Sorry, sir," the young thing at the desk said. "We don't get any papers at all on holidays. Will you be having Thanksgiving dinner with us?" It was that or McDonald's in the village, he thought. Later, he forced himself to go for a walk along the rim of the canyon, but he had seen it many times before, and it wasn't working its charm today. He was too depressed. He went back to the hotel, bought a paperback novel in the shop, and tried to read it. He was asleep again by 9. He was awakened in broad daylight by the sound of something sliding under his door. He raised a sleepy head. A New York Times. At least he could start the day with the news. He was about to open the paper and look inside when a small article in the lower right-hand corner of the front page caught his eye. Film director and 2 others in triple death. "Oh, God," he thought. "It's going to be somebody I know." He read on quickly. It was somebody he knew. The film director Jack Tinney of Los Angeles has been found dead in circumstances that police sources are describing as murder. Wolf dropped the newspaper and put his head in his hands. He took deep breaths, trying to get hold of himself. He tried not to believe it, and he tried not to think of the consequences. He picked up the paper again, read the same sentence twice, then looked at the masthead. It was truly the New York Times. It was not a joke newspaper. This was really happening. Tinney, 48, was found in a guest bedroom of a house in Santa Fe, New Mexico, belonging to his longtime business partner and producer, Wolf Willett. He appeared to have been killed by a shotgun blast. He thought of Flaps and how she had wanted to get into the guest wing. He read on. Also found in the room were the bodies of Willett, 53, and his wife Julia Camden Willett, 27, an actress. They appeared to have been killed in the same manner. This got him breathing hard. He read the words again. They still didn't make any sense. He continued. The bodies were discovered by a housekeeper, Maria Estevez, who had been alerted to their presence by a dog in the house. The apparent murder weapon, an expensive 12-gauge shotgun made by Purdy, the famous gunmakers, was found in the room. The Santa Fe Police Department has issued a statement saying that the murders were committed sometime Tuesday evening and that so far they have no suspects. Wolf fell back onto the bed, his head reeling. He closed his eyes and clutched the covers, trying to lie as still as possible, fighting nausea. His wife and business partner, and some other unfortunate human being, were dead. They'd been killed in his house, with his shotgun. They had been killed at a time when he was obviously present in the house, and he could remember nothing of that day or night. It wasn't much, but it was enough to scare the shit out of him. He must have been responsible for what had happened. He tried to dredge up his reasons. He had been drunk, of course. Else why would he not remember? Or were his deeds on that lost day so terrible that his mind simply could not cope with them? Sex was at the root of this. Of that he was sure. Lately, Julia had begun to evince an interest in more than one sex partner. This had frightened him when she had first broached the subject, then excited him when he had realized that her interest was in having another woman in bed, a long-time fantasy of his. Twice, both times in Santa Fe, Julia had successfully propositioned another woman. They had been nights to remember. Then he had suspected that all this was a prelude to inviting another man into their bed. This thought seemed to point to what might have happened. He got drunk. Julia took Jack and another man to bed. He had caught them and, in a drunken fit of jealousy, used the shotgun on them. He realized that he had to find out exactly what had happened. He waited until after dinner before leaving the hotel. Santa Fe Airport closed at 10 p.m., and after that it became a ghost of a landing field. It was just after 9 when he took off from Grand Canyon and headed east. He had filed no flight plan, and he climbed to 11,500 feet before leveling off. Then his eye caught something in the New York Times on the seat beside him. Obituaries on page B14. There were only 3 obituaries on the page. His, Julia's, and Jack's. Jack's occupied the whole of the page above the fold. Such care was not present in Wolf's obit. There was a brief, fairly accurate summary of his life before the William Morris Agency. Julia's obituary shook him to his core. It was not as brief as his own. The woman who called herself Julia Camden before she married Wolf Willett was born Miriam Schlemmer, daughter of a German Jewish pawnbroker in Cleveland, Ohio, some 7 years before her claimed birth date. During her high school years, she was arrested on numerous occasions, usually for shoplifting or joyriding in stolen cars with boyfriends. She had served 2 brief terms in the Women's Detention Center on Rikers Island for prostitution, extortion, and trafficking in cocaine. In 1985, she turned up in Los Angeles with her new name and an apparently faked resume as an actress in off-Broadway productions, and soon found work in the film business, at least once in a pornographic movie. It was when she appeared in Jack Tinney's film Broken Charms, ironically playing a streetwalker, that she met the man who would become her third husband. Mrs. Willett is survived by a younger sister who is serving a 5 to 8 year sentence for the involuntary manslaughter of her husband, a diamond dealer in the New York jewelry district, whom she had attempted, with an accomplice, to rob. It was a good thing the Bonanza had a working autopilot, because for some minutes Wolf was incapable of flying the airplane. Wolf found Santa Fe Airport as deserted as he had hoped. He taxied past Capital Aviation, down to the T hangars, put away the airplane, drove the Porsche out of the hangar, and locked up. He avoided as much of the downtown as possible, and it was just past 11 when he reached the entrance to Wilderness Gate. The subdivision was on the outskirts of the city, in the low mountains to the south. The area was zoned for lots of a minimum of 5 acres, and the houses built there were expensive. He drove past the drive, looking for any sign of life, a police car maybe, then turned around and came back. A sign was posted on the door, which he could just read in the moonlight. Crime scene, no entry without permission of the District Attorney of Santa Fe County. He was sealed out of his own house. He fumbled along the wall on the dark side of the house and came to a window. Thank God Maria, the housekeeper, was always concerned about getting enough fresh air. The window was open a good 4 inches. He pushed up the window and climbed silently through into the utility room. He switched on a little flashlight and found his way into the kitchen. Wolf hoped someone was taking care of Flaps, being charmed by her grins. He turned, reluctantly, to the guest wing. There were 4 guest rooms, and they had often been filled. There was another seal on the last door. Did he really want to see this? The king-size bed was a horrible mess, soaked with blood, which had turned black. The headboard and the wall behind it were spattered, and there were the effects of 3 shotgun blasts, 2 in the headboard and 1 in the wall above it. One of the victims had apparently stood up on the bed when confronted with death. He had enough. He could not let himself spend a night in this house. He changed clothes, then chose a large leather-zippered bag from a matched set of Italian luggage and began putting things into it, including his travel toilet kit. Money, he would need that. He left through the kitchen door, the seal had been broken anyway, and drove away from the house. He headed for his next and last stop in Santa Fe. At this one, he hoped to get some answers. The lights of houses became more widely spaced, and several miles farther on, he came to the gate. It was closed. Wolf pulled up to the intercom box and pressed the buzzer. A moment later, a voice said, "Yes?" Wolf took a deep breath. "Mark, it's Wolf." There was a long silence. "Mark, it's Wolf. I'm not dead. I'm at your front gate. Let me in." Another silence, then a loud electronic beep, and the electric gate slid open. Wolf drove quickly down the long drive. As Wolf drove up to the house, an outside light came on. Mark Shea stood just inside, a tall, bear-like figure looking warily out. Then his face collapsed in astonishment. "It is you, for Christ's sake." He stepped forward and gathered Wolf into his arms, then held him at arm's length. Tears were streaming down his face. "And I thought I was never going to see you again." Mark pulled him inside. "I expect you need a drink," he said. "That I do," Wolf replied. Mark handed him a bourbon, and his hand shook. He poured one for himself. "Now," he said, "tell me what's happened." "Christ, Mark, I don't know what the hell happened. I thought you might." "Do you know anything at all?" Mark asked. "Only what I read in the New York Times this morning." Mark nodded. "Then you know the worst. About Julia and Jack, I mean." He looked into the fire, his craggy face sad. "I'm glad at least that I didn't have to tell you that. I'm awfully sorry, Wolf. I know how much you loved them both." For the first time since all this had started, Wolf lost control. He sat in the chair and sobbed. Mark leaned forward, slapped a big hand onto Wolf's knee and squeezed. "Go ahead, man. You need to grieve." Gradually, Wolf got hold of himself. "Do you know anything more about this?" he asked. Mark fell back into his chair. "I got a call from the police a little after 10 Wednesday morning asking me to come up to your place. When I arrived, the place was crawling with Santa Fe cops and the state police. Martinez, the district attorney, told me what had happened. Your maid had identified the bodies, but he asked me to confirm. God, I hated doing that." "I saw the room," Wolf said, and took a big gulp of the dark scotch. "Martinez took me into the room and pulled back the sheet. It was—" He took a swig from his glass. "Indescribable." "I can imagine. Were they naked?" "Yes. Their clothes were scattered around the room." "You were wrong about me. How did you identify Julia and Jack?" "Well, of course, I'd never seen any of you naked before, and the faces, the wounds were all to the head. Jack was wearing that enormous silver ring he bought from an old Indian on the plaza that day. We were with him, remember?" "Yes. And Julia?" "The tattoo." Wolf nodded. Julia had, before he had known her, had a tiny sunflower tattooed onto her right breast, high enough so that it would show when she was wearing something low-cut. It had always amused him. "There's no doubt about her, then." "I'm afraid not. I hope I can be forgiven for thinking the other man was you. He was the same size and build, and his hair, or what was left of it, was thick and graying like yours." "I don't remember anything about that night, Mark, and nothing about the day before." The two men stared at each other for a moment, and some unspoken fear seemed to pass between them. "Mark, you were her analyst. Did you know anything about that?" Pain crossed Mark's face. "Yes. After a long time had passed, I sensed she was holding something back, and finally she came out with it." "The time stuff was true, then?" "All of it, I'm afraid. I hope you understand why I couldn't tell you, Wolf." "Sure, doctor-patient confidentiality and all that. Mark, I want you to hypnotize me." Mark had hypnotized him half a dozen times a couple of years before to help him stop smoking. He had been a good subject. Mark looked down into his drink. "I don't know if that's such a good idea, Wolf." "Mark, I've lost a whole day. I want it back. I've got to know what happened." "Wolf, if your mind refuses to remember, it's for a reason. It's a protective function of the mind, like a circuit breaker that cuts out when there's an electrical overload." "Yeah, I understand that. I still want to know. Maybe I was a witness." "If you couldn't handle it then, what makes you think you can handle it now? You could end up catatonic." "I'm willing to take that chance. I can't stand not knowing." Mark's shoulders sagged. "You're my friend, Wolf. I'll help you if I can." Later, when Wolf woke, Mark was gone from the room. He sat up on the leather couch and rubbed his face with his hands. He felt a little light-headed, but well-rested, He looked at his watch. 2 a.m. He'd been out for over 2 hours. Mark came back and handed him a large glass of fresh orange juice. I had difficulty waking you, so I just let you sleep it off naturally. Does that often happen with subjects? No, it's not rare. You needed the rest, I think, and your unconscious knew that. I still don't remember anything. What did I say when I was under? Wolf, you have to understand that what you said isn't necessarily what happened. I did it, didn't I? Wolf sank onto the sofa again. The mind is strange, Wolf. Your mind may have altered events in order to expiate the guilt you were feeling, a kind of self-confession, if you see what I mean. So, this was inconclusive? Yes. Otherwise, I'd be in the position of having to wonder whether I should call the police. Why don't I remember what I said when I was under? Well, I instructed you not to. It would have done no earthly good for you to remember, and it may have done you a great deal of harm. What am I going to do, Mark? Mark sighed. Well, I think your choices are very limited, he said sadly. You think I should turn myself in? Only after talking to the best possible criminal lawyer, Mark said, raising a warning finger. Locally, that would be Ed Eagle. The Indian guy? He's thought to be among the best in the country. Ed plays by what he calls Santa Fe rules, and it works for him and for his clients. I know him, and I'd be glad to call him for you. You know me well, Mark. Or should, after 2 years of deep analysis, don't you think? And you're a good friend, too. Mark shrugged. Wolf, there was something that came up in your analysis that you wouldn't talk about at the time. I didn't want to ask you about it under hypnosis. What was that? Wolf asked, knowing the answer. There was another time when you lost a day from your life. Wolf looked into the fire. 1.5 days, he said. At the time of your first wife's death? The fear came back. The dread that he had fought for so many years crept out of its banishment and seized him again. He did not try to fight it. Her name was Maggie. She worked for a casting agent Jack and I used. I was impressed with her judgment of actors, and she was extremely attractive, too. We began seeing a lot of each other. He paused. Go on, Mark said gently. We had talked about marriage and agreed that neither of us had any business getting married. She thought that I was a workaholic, and I knew she didn't want to give up her career. He shook his head. What happened? She got pregnant. And what was your reaction to that? Panic. No other word for it. When she told me, I had this flash forward of the next 20 years, and I didn't like it. Did you ask her to have an abortion? Not in so many words. I think I was as afraid of doing that as I was afraid of having the child. So, how did you deal with the problem? I made my decision. I told her that I loved her, and I wanted to marry her, and I wanted the baby. We bought a house. I refused to go to childbirth classes on the grounds that I was squeamish. Did you see the baby as driving a wedge between you and Maggie? Wolf leaned forward and put his face in his hands. God help me, I did. I know now how stupid that was. What happened then? Maggie went into labor about a month early. We weren't ready for it. I wasn't anyway. She called me from her office, and I raced over to get her and take her to the hospital. At least, I think that's how it happened. You don't remember? No. I never have. The car went over the center line on La Cienega and hit a truck nearly head-on her side. The cops found me in a diner across the street eating a cheeseburger, for Christ's sake. They told me later that when I was taken back to the wreck to identify Maggie, I passed out. I woke up in the hospital, and I didn't remember any of it. Did some part of you believe that you had deliberately tried to kill the baby so that you could have Maggie to yourself? A big part of me did. Did you seek any therapy after that? No. I just lived with it. Wolf, my poor dear friend, what hell you put yourself through. Wolf turned to him. I'm back in hell now, he said. Tell Eagle I'll call him in a few days. There's something I have to get done first, and to get it done, I have to stay dead a little while longer. Wolf flew into Los Angeles at dawn and landed at Santa Monica Airport, having given a false name on his flight plan. He drove straight to his L.A. house to meet with his staff. His appearance shocked his business manager, Hal Berger, and his production coordinator, Dave Martinelli. His usual film editor was out of town, so he called Jane Deering, a young editor whose work he admired. Wolf knew he had to finish post-production on the film he and Jack had recently finished shooting before the news became public. Hal, Dave, and Jane were happy to help. Wolf had forgotten how attractive Jane Deering was. Small, dark, a terrific figure in tight jeans and a t-shirt. She never seemed to wear anything else the few times he had met her. I'd like you to cut the picture with me, Wolf told her. That's good enough for me, Jane said, if I can get my sister to stay with my little girl. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were married. I'm not married. I just have a little girl. She's 8. She got up. I'll call my sister. Can I use the kitchen phone? Sure. And Jane, I'd appreciate it if you'd move in here. You can have the guest house. Okay, but I'm going to need an hour or two a day with Sarah. That's my daughter. Sure, whenever you like. The other 22 hours are mine, though. Deal, she said. The editing work took 10 days, longer than Wolf had intended, but less time than ever before, and he was pleased. In the process, he and Jane had learned to work together. Hal had laughed aloud throughout. Jesus, he said, it's fucking wonderful. It's Jack's best work. Wolf and Jane exchanged an amused glance. I'm glad you like it, Hal, Wolf said. When the others had gone, Wolf sat in his study and stared at the telephone. Finally, he heaved a deep, fearful sigh and picked up the phone. The Eagle practice? A woman's voice answered. I'd like to speak to Mr. Eagle, Wolf said. Whom may I say is calling? A friend of Mark Shea. I believe he's expecting my call. There was a moment's pause, and a deep, rich voice drawled. This is Ed Eagle. Mr. Eagle, I believe Mark Shea called you about me. He did, Eagle replied laconically. Who are you? I would prefer not to give you my name until we can meet and see if we can establish a client-attorney relationship, Wolf said. Well, sounds like you're a lawyer, Eagle said. When do you want to come by here? I'm not in Santa Fe at the moment, Wolf said. I don't think I could make it there much before 11. He didn't want to reach the city until after dark. That'll be all right, Eagle replied. I'm usually up late. I'll get there earlier if I can. See you this evening, then, Mr. Willett. Goodbye, Mr. Eagle. Wolf had already hung up before he realized that Ed Eagle had known his name. Wolf landed at Santa Fe Airport half an hour after the field closed. Once in the Porsche, he became downright paranoid, working his way to the north side of town by back roads and side streets, nearly fainting when a police car pulled up beside him at a traffic light, then ignored him. The road leveled out at a broad, graveled area before a sizable adobe residence. He climbed the front steps, but before he could ring the bell, the large carved door made a clicking sound and swung open. "In here," a deep voice called from Wolf's right. He closed the door and walked down the wide central hallway. A round table sat at its center, a big arrangement of desert flowers upon it. "Come in," the voice called, and Wolf turned right into a large study, lit only by a fire in the wide hearth. Ed Eagle rose from one of a pair of huge wing chairs arranged before the fireplace. He extended a hand. "May I call you Wolf?" He towered over his guest. Wolf allowed his hand to be enveloped. "Sure." The guy must be 6'5" or 6'6", he thought. "I'm Ed. I'm 6'7", plus another couple of inches from the boots. Everybody always wonders." He waved Wolf to the other chair, smiling a little. "Why do you need a criminal lawyer?" he asked. "I'm not sure I do." "Sure, you're sure. Let's not tap dance, Wolf. It's tiring. Why don't you tell me about it, and you may consider this conversation privileged. Start the night of the killings." "I have no memory of that night, none whatever." "Is that what you're going to say to a jury?" "You've already decided to put me on the stand?" Wolf asked, incredulous. "I don't defend against murder charges unless my client will testify. I reckon it's more in his interests for him to lie to a jury if he feels he has to, than to refuse to talk to them. In my experience, juries think that's kind of standoffish." "What's this going to cost me, Ed?" $250,000 if we go to trial, and that's up front. I'll take a mortgage on something if you've got an unencumbered asset." "What about appeals?" "I've never had to appeal a capital case, so if it comes to that, it's on the house." "What's your opinion of my chances so far? Could I beat a murder charge?" "Wolf, this is Santa Fe, and everything is done a little differently here. We're playing by Santa Fe rules." "So I'd have at least a chance, you think?" "Well, let me put it this way," Ed Eagle said. "If it's me against the state of New Mexico, it'll be a fair fight." Wolf woke in a pleasant guest room of Ed Eagle's house. He found his watch just after 7 a.m. and struggled through a shave and a shower. Feeling better, he found his way downstairs. Ed Eagle was reading the Wall Street Journal, surrounded by the debris of a finished breakfast and a stack of other newspapers. He looked up. "Morning," he said. "You feeling better?" "Rested," Wolf replied. Eagle put down his newspaper. "At 9 o'clock we find out whether you're going to be arrested." "How do we do that?" "We visit the district attorney." Wolf had trouble swallowing the first bite of his breakfast. "Something I need to ask you," Eagle said. "Didn't think of it last night, and I don't want you to be offended." "Shoot." "Did you and your wife ever go to bed with anybody else? Together, I mean." Wolf nodded. "We had a couple of threesomes. Julia always arranged it." "With another man or another woman?" "Always with another woman, although I think Julia was angling for 2 men." "Were the third partners different?" "No, it was the same woman both times." "Who was she?" "Her name is Monica Collins." "That rings a bell, but I can't place her," Eagle said. "She lives in Santa Fe, divorced from a big-time independent movie producer named Franklin J. Collins." "I've got her now. Blonde, 40-ish. Beverly Hills dental work." "Yeah, that's Monica." "Have you seen Monica Collins since then?" a couple of times at other people's houses. One more thing. Would you say that during your sexual encounters, Miss Collins exhibited an equal interest in you and Julia? No. I mean, she certainly seemed excited with me, but once I was done in, she and Julia turned to each other, and I'd say it was pretty clear that she was a lot more excited by Julia than by me. How do you think Miss Collins would feel about testifying about these encounters? My guess is that she would be horrified at the thought of testifying. If I subpoenaed her, do you think she'd tell the truth under oath? Hard to say, but I doubt it. Wolf and Ed arrived at the state court building precisely at 9 o'clock in 2 cars. As they walked to the entrance, Eagle spoke only once. "Don't say anything unless I tell you to," he said. "And if I tell you to, tell the truth, but don't be verbose." Eagle gave his name to the district attorney's secretary, and they were shown in immediately. "Hello, Bob," Eagle said, shaking the man's hand. "Hello, Ed," the man replied. "This is Bob Martinez, the district attorney," Eagle said to Wolf. "Bob, this is my client, Wolf Willett." "Hello," Wolf said. "How do you—" Martinez stopped talking and looked at Eagle. "Who?" "That's right, Bob. Mr. Willett is alive and well. May we sit down?" The amazed Martinez nodded and sat down himself, rather heavily. "Well, you're quite a surprise, Mr. Willett." Wolf managed to smile, but said nothing. "Bob," Eagle said, "Wolf came to see me last night, referred by a mutual acquaintance. He is, of course, aware of his constitutional rights, and I would like to point out for the record, before we begin, that he is here voluntarily to be of help." "I take your point, Ed," Martinez said. "Mr. Willett, do you have any objections to answering some questions?" "None at all, Bob," Eagle said. "Wolf has nothing to hide." Martinez picked up the telephone. "Virginia, come in here with a tape recorder and your pad, please." When the stenographer was ready, Martinez began. After an hour of intense questioning, Martinez sat back in his chair. "Just one final question, Mr. Willett," he said. "Why have you waited so long to report to the authorities that you are still alive?" Wolf leaned forward earnestly. "Mr. Martinez, I run a film production company that employs some 12 people. Before his death, my partner, Jack Tinney, had completed shooting on a film for which we both had high hopes. When I learned of the killings, I had no idea what my involvement with the authorities might entail, whether I would be able to work. It was vital to the health of my company and the continued employment of my people that the film be completed and submitted to the studio for which it was made. I went to Los Angeles for that reason only, and as soon as work on the film was complete, I returned to Santa Fe." "Do you have any plans to leave Santa Fe, Mr. Willett?" Martinez asked. "None," Eagle replied before Wolf could speak. "Wolf will be available to you at all times until your investigation is complete." "All right," Martinez said. "I'll want Mr. Willett to formally identify the bodies, of course. The Santa Fe Police Department will be in touch about that." "Of course." Eagle herded Wolf toward the door. "That's it?" Wolf asked, a little dazed. "Not on your life," Eagle said. "When Martinez has recovered from the shock of finding out you're alive, he'll be all over you, and so will the Santa Fe cops and the state police. But at least we bluffed them into not arresting you." Later that afternoon, Captain Joe Carreras, a trim-looking Latin from the violent crimes section of the Santa Fe Police, and his state police colleague, Major Sam Warren, arrived and drove Wolf to the morgue to identify his wife's body. Wolf had not been prepared for this. The corpse was so white, when Julia had always been so tan. It might have been made of marble, yet it seemed shrunken, diminished. The large breasts had settled like puddles of plaster. Two things heightened the familiarity: the brightly painted fingernails — Julia had always been careful with her nails — and the tattoo of the flower on her right breast, the bright colors of which stood out against the skin, now alabaster in death. He wanted to pull the towel off her head and look at her face, but he reminded himself that there was no face. A strand of hair spilled from under the towel. It was clotted with something black. Wolf nodded. "It's my wife," he said. "You're positive?" Warren asked. His shoulders sagged. "It's Julia." 2 days later, Jane arrived in Arizona, smiling, carrying all her luggage. Wolf bundled her into the Porsche with her bags and headed north on the interstate. "So, what have you done with my movie?" She took a deep breath. "I took 4 minutes out of the middle third." He looked at her, surprised. "I would have chopped little stuff throughout." "I know you would have, but I got this idea, and I want to see if you think it works." "Tell me about it." "I'd rather show you." Later, Jane pointed the remote control at the VCR and stopped the tape. "That's it. The rest is the same as before." "I'm amazed," he said. "I wouldn't have thought it possible, but it worked. Call the lab and tell them to print it." With a triumphant laugh, she leapt up and hugged him. "I knew you'd let me do it." He liked the hug. "Then why didn't you go ahead and make the answer print?" "Well," she said, "there was always a chance you'd be in a bad mood and not spot my brilliance." "I spotted your brilliance," Wolf said. Ed Eagle drove north from New York to Poughkeepsie and turned off at the sign for the correctional facility for women. He presented his card to the man at the gate, who checked his appointment on a list, then waved him to a parking area. He walked through another gate and to the administrative office. "I'm here to see Hannah Schlemmer," he said to a uniformed female clerk. "Take a seat," the woman said, then made a phone call. Finally, another woman in uniform appeared and ushered him to a small, nicely furnished sitting room with a window overlooking a wooded area at the rear of the prison. A moment later, a strikingly beautiful woman walked into the room. She was tall, 5'10" or 5'11", he thought, something that had always appealed to him. She was dressed in tight designer jeans and a blue work shirt that had been knotted at the waist, covering ample breasts, but revealing a couple of inches of flat belly. Her skin was perfect, and she wore little makeup. "Mr. Eagle, I'm Barbara Kennerly," she said, sticking out a hand. Her grip was firm and frank. His own hand did not swallow hers the way it did with most women. "What happened to Hannah Schlemmer?" he asked. "I've just had it changed. The system here hasn't quite caught up with the courts. Won't you sit down?" She might have been an elegant housewife entertaining a guest in her home instead of a convicted felon. Eagle took a comfortable chair. Barbara took the sofa. "How can I help you?" she asked. "I'm a lawyer, Miss Kennerly, and—" "I know who you are, Mr. Eagle. I read the papers." "I'm representing Mr. Wolf Willett, your sister Miriam's husband. I'm trying to get to the bottom of what happened to her." She laughed, something she seemed to do easily. "You mean Julia?" She changed her name long before I did. Yes, Julia. Has Mr. Willett been charged with anything in connection with Julia's death? No. As I say, I'm just trying to get to the bottom of the murders. You're not exactly a private detective, Mr. Eagle. If Mr. Willett has hired you, it must be for a defense. There is no charge to answer at the moment. You're just being prepared in case there is. I don't anticipate a charge. He was not exactly controlling this conversation. I'm impressed that you came all this way yourself when you could have sent somebody, she said, looking him in the eye. Frankly, if I'm going to talk with you, I want to know what you're up to. Eagle sighed. All right, I'll be frank with you. Wolf Willett had nothing to do with the murders. I feel certain of that. But it's possible that the New Mexico authorities might, if they can't solve the case, try to make a victim of him. That's close enough to the truth, I guess, Barbara said. She shrugged. All right, I'll tell you whatever I can. The truth can't harm me. What were the circumstances the last time you saw Julia? She was in jail at Rikers Island. She wanted money for a lawyer. You grew up in Cleveland? Yes. Daddy had a pawn shop on the wrong side of the tracks. Tough neighborhood. He tried to protect us from it, but Julia didn't want protecting. She was always fascinated by the slick guys and fast talkers. I was the straight arrow. It's ironic that I ended up in prison, just like Julia. Did Julia have anything to do with that? No. I was married to a man who had a diamond distribution business in New York. I fell in love with another man, really in love, head over heels, and he convinced me that the only way we were going to be together was to rob my husband and get out. I got him into Murray's office, and the minute he got his hands on the diamonds, he shot Murray. I was stunned. He forced me to go with him. They caught up with us in Florida just as I was about to try to sneak out and turn myself in. What happened then? I turned state's evidence, pled to involuntary manslaughter. I got 5 to 8. I'm up for parole next year. And the man? He got life. Broke out of prison last year. They still haven't caught him. That's partly why I changed my name. I don't want him ever to find me. Did you ever get the feeling that Julia was working some sort of con with Willett? No. If anything, she seemed to have changed. Whenever I talked to her, she always seemed happy as a clam. Is there anything else you can think of that might shed any light on Julia's murder? Was there anybody who might want to kill her? Some enemy from the old days, maybe. I can't think of anybody who would want to kill her. She had a way of making people like her, even when she'd done them wrong. Eagle stood up. Well, I'd better be going. He produced a card. If you think of anything else, I'd appreciate a call. Collect, of course. He felt sorry for the woman, and he was attracted to her. And if I can help, let me know. Thank you for your help. Not at all. If I ever need a lawyer, I'll call you. He was at the point of telling her to call him anyway, but he stopped himself. Now that he was middle-aged, he was trying not to follow his cock around quite so much. Goodbye, then, and good luck. Thanks. She gave him her large, strong hand again. Driving back to New York, he tried to forget how she'd looked in those jeans, about the full breasts under the work shirt. It wasn't easy. When Ed Eagle awoke the following morning in his room at the Pierre, he found that his mind had been at work during the night, something that often happened, and he felt uneasy about his interview with Barbara Kennerly, née Hannah Schlemmer. He picked up the phone and dialed a friend in the office of the district attorney of New York County. "Brian, this is Ed Eagle. How are you?" "I'm good, Ed. You in town?" "Yeah. I'm flying back this afternoon, and I need some information from your office. You tried the Murray Rifkin case?" "That's right." "Can you tell me in general about it?" "Rifkin's wife had a lover with an armed robbery record. He got her to let him into Rifkin's office, where he blew the guy away. They were arrested in Miami, but the guy had already fenced the goods." "What was the disposition?" "The killer, his name was, Grafton. James Grafton. Got life. Rifkin's wife cooperated, copped to involuntary manslaughter, got a 5 to 8. "You remember the woman?" "Do I? She was a knockout." "How much help was she?" "Gave me everything I asked for. Got up and said her piece in court. A stand-up lady. Grafton was a nasty piece of work, too. A slick guy, con man, but with a violent streak." "He's out?" "No way. He got life. He broke jail." "News to me. I wouldn't put it past him, though. He was a piece of work, that guy." "Do you remember what Grafton looked like?" "Yeah. Medium height, slim, late 40s, dark hair, going gray. Good dresser." "Thanks. I appreciate your help." "Anytime." Eagle hung up, then dialed the district attorney's office in Santa Fe. "This is Martinez." "Bob, it's Ed Eagle. How are you?" "Okay, Ed." "Bob, did you run the prints on the John Doe you thought was Wolf Willett?" "Maybe." "Don't be coy, Bob. Who was the guy?" He could hear Martinez shuffling papers. "I don't know that I'm required to give you that information, Ed." "Mind if I take a wild guess?" "Suit yourself." "Grafton. James. A record of armed robbery. Escaped from a New York State prison." There was a stunned silence. "How the fuck did you know that?" "I don't know that I'm required to give you that information, Bob." Eagle was laughing as he hung up the phone. The short day was ending when Wolf drove up to his house. Ed Eagle was standing on the back steps writing a note. "Hello, Ed," he called, getting out of the car. "Hello, Wolf. I thought I had missed you." "Come on in." Wolf led him into the study, took his coat, and offered him a drink. "I'm just back from New York," Eagle said when they were seated. "Did you see Julia's sister?" "Quite a striking girl. She was very cooperative, but I'm not sure how much she helped." "Do you know somebody named Grafton? James Grafton?" Wolf put down his drink. His hand was trembling. Eagle leaned forward. "Wolf, are you all right?" "Yes, I think so," he replied. "It's just—" He stopped. "You do know Grafton, then?" "No. At least, I don't think so. But the name just did something to me. It was like being kicked in the stomach." "Can you remember him at all?" Wolf calmed himself and tried to remember. "No, I can't. I'm sure I don't know anybody by that name. I don't understand this. Who is James Grafton?" "He's the man in the morgue, the one they thought was you." He explained the relationship between Julia's sister and Grafton. "And he came here after breaking out of jail? Why?" "I don't know exactly, but I think Julia's sister must have told him about Julia's marrying you. He might have thought Julia was a good target for blackmail." "But how would he have ended up in bed with Julia and Jack? This doesn't make any sense at all." "No, it doesn't. We'll have to know a lot more before it does. Tell me, Wolf, when was the last time you saw Julia? Alive, I mean? Wolf thought back. In L.A., the editing on the next film wasn't going all that well, and I wanted a break. Did you see Jack around the same time? No. Jack had a way of disappearing right after shooting on a picture was completed, while I worked with the editor. You have no idea where Jack went after shooting was completed. Mexico, probably. He had a place in Puerto Vallarta. He could go down there and drink and screw without my being on his back about it. He'd come back sober, though. Usually, anyway. Wolf made them both another drink. When he came back, he asked, "Is it unusual for you to go to interview somebody like Julia's sister?" "Not really. I often interview potential witnesses myself." "You think she told you the truth?" Eagle sipped his scotch and nodded. "She seems to be a truthful person. The prosecutor who handled her case thought so, anyway." "I'm gonna fix myself a steak. Will you join me?" "Sure, why not?" "You know," Wolf said, "Julia seemed to be a truthful person, too." 10 days later, Eagle's secretary stuck her head in the door to his office. "Excuse me, Ed, but there's a Barbara Kennerly in reception. She says you know her." He sat up straight. "Send her in." Barbara Kennerly walked into the room wearing a Chanel suit and looking like $1 million. "Good afternoon, Mr. Eagle," she said. Eagle stood up. "Good afternoon, Miss Kennerly. Have a seat and call me Ed, please." "Call me Barbara," she said, sitting down and crossing her long, beautiful legs. "How did you get out?" She smiled broadly, revealing perfect teeth. "I was unconditionally released." "Now, why would the state of New York do that?" Eagle asked skeptically. "I got lucky. Shortly after your visit, a federal judge ruled that several state prisons were overcrowded and that the populations had to be reduced immediately. I was a model prisoner, close to parole, so they brought it forward. I'm a free woman." "Congratulations," he said. "Now, why have I come to see you?" she interrupted. "Well, in all the time I was in prison, you were the only visitor I had, apart from the Times reporter. I wanted a new start in a new place, and you did, after all, say to call you if you could be of any help." Eagle laughed. "That's right, I did say that. All right, Barbara, how can I help?" "I need a job," she said. "I've had experience at running an office, with bookkeeping and computers. I'm smart, pretty, and I'd be an asset to any office. And before I was married, I worked in a restaurant as a hostess." "I know a few restaurateurs around town," Eagle said. "Let me make some calls." She rewarded him with another dazzling smile. "Thank you," she said. "There's something I want to ask you first," he said. "Shoot." "Did you speak to James Grafton, or write to him, or send him any messages while you were both in prison?" "Certainly not." "Why the interest in Jimmy Grafton?" She suddenly looked alarmed. "He hasn't turned up in Santa Fe, has he?" "You might say that. He turned up at Wolf Willett's house and got himself shotgunned for his trouble. He's on a slab in Albuquerque right now, missing most of his head." "What?" "At first they thought he was Wolf. They eventually identified him by his fingerprints." "My God," she sighed, shaking her head. "This is bizarre." "It is." "I'll bet he tried to blackmail her about her record." "That's my guess. By the way, What happened to the money Grafton got for the diamonds he stole? Did he stash it somewhere? He must have. He didn't have time to spend it, and he didn't give it to the United Way. I'm sorry to be grilling you like this, but it'll be good practice for you. The local district attorney is very anxious to talk to you about Grafton. She looked alarmed. Does he know my new name? Eagle shook his head. No, but I'll have to tell him I've talked with you. I said I would. Oh, she looked depressed. Just call him, say you talked to me, and that you want to help if you can. She brightened. All right. Where are you staying? Eagle asked. I found a nice bed and breakfast off Canyon Road. Eagle thought fast. This woman was not his client. She was not a suspect in the murders. She was square with the DA. No problems here. Would you like to have dinner one night soon? He asked. She flashed her smile. I'd love it. The week before Christmas, the weather did the right thing. In the middle of the night, snow began to fall in Santa Fe. Wolf felt incredibly lonely as the holiday season approached. On an impulse, he called Jane and invited her and Sarah to spend Christmas with him. His mood lifted when she accepted. That same evening, Barbara Kennerly arrived at Ed Eagle's house for dinner. Eagle cooked, and the conversation was easy and fun. They finished dinner and moved into the study, settled on the big leather sofa. The fire was their only light. She kissed him. Things moved quickly after that. In the middle of the night, Eagle got up to go to the bathroom. When he came back, he stopped and looked at Barbara. In the moonlight, she seemed startlingly pale, sprawled across the bed, her hair in her face, her arms thrown out, her breasts free and beautiful. Eagle bent over to kiss her and was stopped by an oddly familiar sight. Tattooed onto the inside of her right breast was the shape of a flower. He didn't know which one. He was lousy at flowers. The colors were bright, and even the moonlight failed to wash them out. Wolf picked up Jane and Sarah at the Albuquerque airport, and the three of them crammed into the Porsche, along with a lot of Christmas presents. Wolf had watched the rearview mirror all the way, but the police didn't seem to be on his tail. He relaxed when they crossed the county line. Sarah, tucked into one of the tiny rear seats and walled in by packages, pointed at everything, asked about everything. You're talking too much, her mother said to her. I know, but I can't help it, Sarah said. I like it here. You're going to like it even more in Santa Fe, Wolf said. It's like something out of a picture book. When they arrived and Wolf opened the door to the house, Flaps was all over them. At the sight of a child, the dog went berserk. The feeling apparently was mutual. Jane fed Sarah early and put her to bed, protesting. Flaps wouldn't leave the child's room. Wolf made pasta and a salad, and he and Jane sat at the kitchen table and ate slowly. I've missed you, Wolf said. I've missed being here, Jane replied. Life has seemed dull. The doorbell suddenly rang, causing Wolf to jump a foot. He got up and walked to the back door. When he opened it, he recognized the two men immediately, Carreras of the Santa Fe Police Department and Warren of the State Police. They had interviewed him at the beginning. He felt sick to his stomach. Mr. Willett, the Latino officer said, showing a badge. You're under arrest on a charge of triple first-degree homicide. I'll have to ask you to come with us, please. Wolf tried to speak and failed, then tried again. His bowels felt loose. I'd like to call my attorney, he finally managed to croak. You can do that from the police station, the officer said. Get your coat. The two officers watched as he went to a closet and got a coat. He came back to the table where Jane sat, looking frightened. "Jane," he said, "I have to go down to the police station for a while. Please call Ed Eagle for me and tell him where I am. The number is in my address book in the study." "Let's go, Mr. Willett," the officer said. Wolf stood his ground. "If for any reason I can't get back tonight, I'll have Ed call you and explain." "Mr. Willett," the officer said. "Jane, don't worry about this. It's going to be all right. Just call Ed Eagle, all right?" She squeezed his hand. "Of course, Wolf. Don't worry about us. We'll be all right." He heard a clink of metal, and handcuffs were produced. "You don't need those," he said. "Sorry, Mr. Willett. It's policy." His hands were drawn behind his back, and he felt cold steel encircle his wrists. As they walked toward the police car, Carreras began reading Wolf his rights. At the police station, Carreras and Warren grilled Wolf for an hour. They shocked him with the information that they had a witness who saw him having lunch with James Grafton in Los Angeles. Wolf couldn't believe what he was hearing. They also said they had a witness who could place him at home on the night of the murders. Wolf was frightened, but he refused their insistent offer to confess to the crimes. The door slammed behind Wolf, and the noise echoed down the hallway. He had never known jail cells were so small. He looked around the room. 3 walls, a folding sink in the corner that emptied into a toilet, no seat, and 2 steel bunks attached to the wall. There was a movement in the lower bunk, and a pair of high boots swung over the edge and landed on the concrete floor with a slap. "Welcome to purgatory," a hoarse voice said. "Thanks," Wolf replied. The man stood up and stretched. Wolf made him to be at least 6'4" and 250 pounds. He was dressed in his boots, greasy black jeans, and a studded leather vest. No shirt. Biker, Wolf thought. Oh, shit. "Who are you?" the man said. It wasn't a question. "My name's Wolf." The biker burst out laughing. I like it. He stuck out a hand. "I'm Spider." Wolf shook the hand and found it softer and gentler than he'd feared. "I like it. The spider and the wolf." He indicated the lower bunk. "Take a pew, Wolf. Let's talk. It's been 3 days since I talked to anybody but a screw. What are you in for?" Wolf hesitated, then realized this might be his best card. "Triple murder," he said. "No shit," Spider said, awed. "I'm just in for assault." Spider paused. "Tell me something, man. What'd these dudes say they got on you? I'd like to know." "Oh, they said they've got a witness who saw me having lunch with somebody I never heard of. They said they've got another guy who saw me in the room where 3 people were killed." "That sounds familiar," Spider mused. "What?" "That second witness. There's a guy in here told me he saw something like that. Said it was going to get him on the street." "In jail? Here?" "Yeah. This guy was telling me this shit. Says he's going to beat a burglary rap with what he saw." "That's very interesting. I think my lawyer would like to know about that." "Who you got for a mouthpiece?" "A guy named Ed Eagle." "That Indian dude? I hear he's hot shit. How'd you get him?" "Friend of a friend." "Well, Wolf, you got some kind of friends out there. What line are you in?" "I make movies." "No shit. Do you know any movie stars?" "A few, I guess," Wolf replied. "You know Madonna?" "I met her once at a party after an opening. Didn't really talk to her. just shook her hand. "No shit. You know Madonna?" "Well, not really, Spider. I just shook her hand." "I'll be fucked. My cellmate shook Madonna's hand. You're an okay guy, Wolf, for an educated dude and all that." "Thanks, Spider." "You know that guy I told you about?" Yeah." Wolf was nearly asleep. "I think I'll have a word with him in the yard tomorrow morning." Wolf didn't reply. He was out. After breakfast the next morning, the cell door suddenly opened and a guard appeared. "Willett, you're up for arraignment. Let's go." Spider offered him a hand down and a firm handshake. "Good luck, Wolf. If you ever need any help, just phone me up at a bar called the Gun Club and leave a message. I'll get back to you." "Thanks, Spider." An hour later, Wolf found himself in a large courtroom. He looked around for Ed Eagle, who was nowhere to be seen. "People versus Willett arraignment," the bailiff called. Wolf looked around and saw District Attorney Bob Martinez at a table in the well of the court. "Is the defendant represented?" the judge asked. "His attorney of record is not present," Martinez replied. "Bring up Willett," the judge called. A guard led Wolf into the well of the court before the bench. "Mr. Willett, you are represented by—" The judge consulted a paper on his desk. "Ah, Ed Eagle," he said. "Where is Mr. Eagle?" "Your Honor, I was arrested last night without warning, and I've been unable to reach Mr. Eagle," Wolf said. "Well, Mr. Willett," the judge said, "it looks like you're going to have to be the guest of the county until Mr. Eagle turns up, unless you'd like a public defender." "Your Honor, Mr. Willett's counsel is present." The voice came from the rear of the courtroom. Wolf turned to see Ed Eagle striding down the aisle and into the well of the court. He came and stood next to Wolf. "Your Honor, I apologize for my tardiness, but I was in Los Angeles when I received a message late last night. I have only just returned. May I have a moment to consult with my client?" "Of course, Mr. Eagle, and welcome back. Mr. Martinez, let's continue with the next case while Mr. Eagle and Mr. Willett consult." Eagle took Wolf by the arm and led him out of the courtroom and into a small anteroom. "I'm terribly sorry about this, Wolf," he said. "It was midnight when I got Miss Deering's message and returned her call, and there was no way to get word to you. Did the police pump you last night?" "Yes." Wolf gave Eagle a complete account of his interview with the two detectives. "So they're claiming witnesses now?" Eagle asked. "Yeah, that's what they said. My cellmate last night thinks he knows one of them. The guy's in for burglary, and he's been telling people he's going to get off by testifying against somebody he saw while attempting to burglarize a house." "I'm worried about this business of your being seen with Grafton in L.A., Eagle said. "Are you absolutely certain you don't know him? This is important, Wolf." "Ed, I have lunch in L.A. restaurants every day of my life when I'm there, but I swear I didn't know Grafton." "All right, I'll handle that. The main thing in this arraignment is to get bail. If we can get it, my guess is it's going to run high. How are you fixed for cash?" "Pretty good. I've just been paid by the studio I release films through. I've got some investments, too. Also, I've got the Santa Fe house to put up. There's no mortgage." "Well, the house is good." A guard opened the door. "The judge is ready for you, Mr. Eagle." "We're on, Wolf," Eagle said. "Just relax and leave it to me." "Mr. Martinez," the judge said, "do you wish to address the court?" The district attorney rose. "Your Honor, This is a preliminary hearing in the matter of the state of New Mexico versus Willett, comprised of 3 counts of first-degree murder. Do you wish to call any witnesses? Your Honor, the state calls Captain Joe Carreras. Carreras, whom Wolf had not noticed, rose from a spectator seat, took the witness stand, and was sworn in. Martinez addressed Carreras. State your name, rank, and occupation. Captain Joe Carreras of the Santa Fe Police Department. I command the Investigations Division. Did you arrest the defendant Willett last evening? Yes. On what evidence did you base your request for a warrant? Martinez asked. The 3 victims were murdered in Mr. Willett's house at a time when he was present. They were murdered with a shotgun belonging to Mr. Willett. One of the victims was Mr. Willett's wife, and she was in bed, naked at the time, with his business partner and another friend of his. I'm not satisfied with Mr. Willett's account of his actions. Mr. Willett has lied to me with regard to his presence in the house at the time of the murders and with regard to his knowledge of the 3rd victim, James Grafton. I have a witness who can place Mr. Willett in the room where the murders occurred on the night of the murder. I have a witness who can confirm Mr. Willett's intimate knowledge of Mr. Grafton. Ed Eagle was on his feet. Captain Carreras, he said. Yes, sir? You say you have a witness who can place Mr. Willett in the room where the murders occurred on the night of the murder? Yes, I do. Carreras permitted himself a small smile. Tell me, is your witness presently an inmate of the Santa Fe County Jail? The smile disappeared. Martinez stood. Objection, irrelevant. I'll permit it, the judge said. Answer the question, Captain Carreras. Yes. Is your witness awaiting trial on a criminal charge? Eagle continued. Yes. Has your witness been offered a reduction of sentence or any other inducement to testify? Carreras looked uncomfortable. Yes. Captain Carreras, on what occasion did Mr. Willett tell you, or anyone else, for that matter, that he was not present in the house at the time of the murders? Carreras seemed to search for an answer. In fact, Mr. Willett told you that he had no memory of that evening, didn't he? Yes. So, if he told you he had no memory of that evening, that is not a claim of his whereabouts, is it? I suppose not. So, your case so far is based on the testimony of an accused felon who is bargaining for his freedom, and on Mr. Willett's statements, which you have just, shall we be kind and say, misinterpreted for the court. There's also the matter of his denial of knowledge of one of the victims and the matter of Jack Tinney's will, Carreras said. Tell me, how did you learn of Mr. Willett's alleged knowledge of Mr. Grafton? I visited Los Angeles in the course of my investigation, and I received statements from a head waitress and a waiter at a restaurant that Willett had had lunch in the restaurant in the company of Mr. Grafton. How did these witnesses identify him? By a photograph. Can the state produce this photograph? Eagle asked. Martinez stood and shuffled through his files. Here's the photograph, Your Honor. Eagle took the photograph, looked at it, and placed it on the defense table. Wolf picked it up and looked at it. A slim, graying man, holding a placard with a number on it, stared back at him. Wolf stopped breathing. Eagle continued with Carreras. A prison photograph, was it? Yes. A good likeness? Good enough for the witnesses. Wolf stood up. Excuse me, Your Honor, but I request permission to speak to my attorney for a moment. Eagle looked surprised. May I have a moment, Your Honor? Yes, but be brief, Mr. Eagle. I have a full morning. Eagle walked to the defense table. What is it, Wolf? Wolf tapped the photograph on the table. I know him, he said. Eagle froze for a moment. I'm going to put you on the stand in a moment. Tell the truth. He turned back to Carreras. Thank you, Judge. I have but one more question for this officer. Proceed, Mr. Eagle. Captain Carreras, did you at any time show this photograph or any other photograph of Grafton to Mr. Willett? Carreras looked suspicious. No, he said. No further questions, Your Honor. The defense calls Wolf Willett to testify. The district attorney, who was halfway to his feet, sat down heavily. The judge peered at Eagle. You realize, of course, that Mr. Willett's testimony in this hearing can be used against him in a trial. Of course, Your Honor. The defense has nothing to hide. Wolf took the stand and was sworn in. Now, Mr. Willett, I will show you a photograph and ask you if you are or were acquainted with this man. Eagle handed Wolf the photograph of Grafton. Yes, I knew him as Dan O'Hara. How did you meet? My wife asked me to meet with him. She said he was a friend of hers from New York. Why did she want you to meet him? Mr. O'Hara, as I then knew him, had written a screenplay and was anxious to have it produced. I read the screenplay. Did you then meet with this O'Hara? I did. I took him to lunch at a restaurant called Morton's in Los Angeles. What was the substance of your discussion? He asked my opinion of the screenplay. I told him I thought it was very good. However, I had no wish to produce it myself. It was about a prison break, and it was not the sort of thing that Mr. Tinney and I undertook. I offered to call someone I knew at Warner Brothers who might be interested, and I later did so. I believe Mr. O'Hara entered into a contract with that studio to produce the film. Did you ever see this O'Hara again? No. He did telephone to tell me the outcome of his talks with Warner Brothers and to thank me for sending him there. I recommended a lawyer to negotiate the contract for him. And that was your only contact with him ever again? It was. One final question. Why did you tell the district attorney and the police that you did not know James Grafton? I had never heard that name before. When I saw his body at the county morgue, it had no face. I had no idea that Grafton and O'Hara were the same man until I saw that photograph here this morning. I have nothing further, Your Honor. The prosecution may question my client. Martinez hesitated, then said, I have no questions for Mr. Willett at this time, Your Honor, he said. The judge spoke up. The witness is excused. Mr. Eagle, do you have a motion? Yes, Judge. I move that the charges against Mr. Willett be dismissed for lack of evidence. Mr. Martinez? Martinez rose. The prosecution opposes the motion and asks that Mr. Willett be bound over to a grand jury. The judge thought for a moment. Motion denied, he said. Do you have a request for bail, Mr. Eagle? I do, Your Honor. I request that Mr. Willett be released on bail in the amount of $1,000. Martinez was on his feet again. Your Honor, this was a heinous crime. 3 people have been brutally murdered. The prosecution vehemently opposes bail. The judge thought for a moment. The defendant will be released on bail of $100,000, he said. Next case. Eagle took Wolf by the arm. "Let's get out of here," he said. When Wolf awoke, someone was in bed with him. He opened his eyes, and Jane was there, asleep, wearing a sweater and jeans. He turned to face her, and she opened her eyes. "How long have you been there?" he asked. She looked at her wristwatch. "About half an hour." "Oh," he said, disappointed. "I wish you had been there longer." She laughed. "I got up and made breakfast for Sarah and Flaps. They went out to build a snowman, so I thought I'd look in on you. You were sleeping like a child. I couldn't bring myself to wake you." He leaned over and kissed her. A few minutes later, Wolf went into the study and dialed Mark's number. "Mark Shea." "Hi, it's Wolf." "Oh, Wolf," Mark replied, sounding tired. "I've been wondering how you were. I'm sorry I haven't called, but I've been swamped. Jane Deering and her daughter are in town, and Maria's cooking us a big Christmas dinner tomorrow. Why don't you join us?" "Oh, thanks, Wolf, but I'm committed to something. I would like to talk with you, though. Listen, do you think you could come around here late tomorrow afternoon?" "Sure. Could I bring Jane and Sarah?" "I'd really like to talk to you alone. Do you mind?" "No, not at all. What time?" "Around 6. "Fine.
Mark, are you all right? You sound a bit weary."
"Well, a lot has been going on. That's what I want to talk to you about. I've got some explaining to do, Wolf, and I'm looking forward to getting it off my chest."
"What on earth are you talking about?"
"I'll tell you everything tomorrow. See you at 6. Oh, and Merry Christmas."
"You too, Mark." That night, when Sarah was asleep, Wolf lit a fire in the study and poured himself and Jane a brandy. "You're good with Sarah," Jane said. "I like her. I haven't spent a lot of time around children, but I feel very comfortable with Sarah." "She feels comfortable with you, too," Jane said. "That hasn't always been the case with the men in my life." Wolf reclined on the sofa and pulled her head onto his shoulder. They kissed, then began to move against each other. "You don't know what you're getting yourself into," Wolf said. "Maybe not," she replied, "but I'm willing to find out." They made love on the floor in front of the fire until only glowing coals were left. "Best Christmas I ever had," Wolf sighed. When Wolf woke on Christmas morning, Jane was under the covers with him again, this time without clothes. But they were not alone. Sarah was jumping up and down on the bed, screaming, "It's Christmas, it's Christmas," and Flaps was on the bed too, dancing and barking. All right, Jane cried. "Just give us a minute. We'll meet you at the tree." The little girl and the dog bounded from the room.
"What was that?" Wolf said sleepily. "A terrorist attack?"
"That was a little girl and a dog on Christmas morning," Jane groaned. "And if we don't get up and get in there right now, they'll be back, I promise you."
When they arrived at the tree, Sarah was separating the presents into 3 piles, while Flaps helped by sniffing everything carefully. Sarah's was the biggest pile. She tore into the packages, shrieking with delight at each gift, no matter what it was. Maria cooked a grand Christmas dinner, and they ate formally in the dining room, stuffing themselves with the traditional dinner. After eating, Wolf and Jane left Sarah playing with her new Nintendo game, and Flaps methodically removing the skin from one of her new tennis balls. They napped for most of the afternoon, and when Wolf woke, it was time to visit Mark Shea. New snow had fallen during the night, and Wolf drove carefully through the nearly deserted streets. The only light in Mark's compound was from the outbuilding that was Mark's professional suite, and Wolf turned toward it at the fork in the drive. The big house, off to the right, looked empty. haunted. Wolf left the Porsche and trudged to the front door, following another set of footprints that seemed to be going the other way. Wolf rapped sharply on the door and opened it. "Hello? Mark?" Music was playing, quite loudly. Vivaldi, The Four Seasons. Wolf looked around and saw no one. The music became an irritant, and he went to the stereo in the bookcase and switched it off. It was then that he heard the noise, and it made his hair stand on end. A rasping groan. He walked around the sofa and found Mark Shea lying on his side, trying to get up. "Mark," Wolf managed to say. He went to his friend and turned him over onto his back. The front of his white shirt was a mass of blood, and turning him over revealed an expanding pool of red on the carpet. Mark's mouth moved, but no sound came out, except the rasp. "Hang on, Mark," Wolf said, grabbing for the phone. With one hand he dialed 0, while with the other he loosened Mark's shirt collar. "Operator, get me the police. This is an emergency." The operator was matter-of-fact. "May I have the number you're calling from?" Frantic, Wolf looked at the telephone in his hand, but there was no number on it. "Listen to me. A man is badly hurt, and I want the sheriff's department right now. Do you hear me?" "All right, keep your shirt on," the operator said sourly. A moment later he was connected. "Sheriff's department? Hello, I need an ambulance and the police here right away. A man's been shot." He recited directions to Mark's house. "Your name and number?" the deputy said. "My name is Willett. Please hurry and get here." "Is the man badly hurt?" "Yes, very." "We're on the way." Wolf hung up and turned his attention back to Mark. His eyes were glazed. "Mark, can you hear me?" he asked. Mark's eyes came back into focus, and he seemed to recognize Wolf. He nodded. "Can you tell me who did this?" Mark's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Wolf couldn't read his lips. "Try, Mark. Try hard. I can't do anything to help you, and I have to know who did this." Mark did try harder, and this time Wolf could understand the words. "She did," he managed to say. "Who, Mark? Who did it?" Mark tried again and failed. His eyes began to lose their focus. He jerked in a sharp breath, and it came out in a rattle. Wolf saw his pupils dilate. Mark Shea was dead. Wolf called Ed Eagle, who arrived just after the police. Wolf was quickly ruled out as a suspect, and Eagle led Wolf to his car. "Go on home now and relax. You're out of this one." Wolf got into his car, then rolled down the window. He looked thoughtful. "Ed, 3 of the people closest to me have been murdered now. What do you think is going on?" Eagle shook his head. "I wish the hell I knew, my friend. But I'll tell you this. I think you ought to have somebody up at the house with you. I can get somebody to do that." Wolf thought about it, then shook his head. "No, I don't think so." "All right, whatever you say. But I think it might be a good idea to keep that gun of yours handy." Wolf nodded, then seemed to think again for a moment. "Ed, have you seen Julia's sister recently?" A little chill went through Eagle. "Yes, last night, in fact. She was at my house." "What time did she leave?" "Around midnight, I think." "Had it started to snow yet?" "No." "I just wondered," Wolf said. He started the car and drove away, leaving Eagle staring after him. Barbara Kennerly was a big girl, Eagle remembered. 5'10" and 135, maybe. She drove a Cherokee, and when he had kissed her goodnight, she had been wearing snow boots. There were Goodyear tire tracks in Mark Shea's driveway, the type used on Jeeps like the Cherokee, and snow boot tracks leading to his door. The following morning, Wolf put Jane, Sarah, and a great many shopping bags into a taxi and sent them to Albuquerque Airport. He watched the cab disappear down the road to Santa Fe. He had never felt more alone. Wolf hardly left the house. He tried to stay busy, making and taking frequent calls about progress on the new film, if he should ever be free to shoot it. He began laying out the film scene by scene, drawing storyboards and making lists of actors for roles. He refused all comment on Mark Shea's death, referring callers to Ed Eagle. He heard through Eagle that some friends of Mark's were arranging a memorial service, but no one called him about it. He and Jane talked on the phone every day. He asked Hal Berger to find some charity to give Julia's clothes and personal belongings to, and to have her jewelry appraised for a possible sale. He had reached a point where he wanted any vestige of Julia gone. On New Year's Eve, he had a call late in the afternoon from Hal. "Wolf, I'm at your house in Bel Air, and I'm afraid things aren't right here. There are some big problems." "What sort of problems, Hal?" "Let me start at the beginning. You remember that when you and Julia were married, she insisted on taking over the household accounts. I had been paying the household bills from the office, but she wanted to do it." "Yes, Julia seemed to want to run as much of my life as possible, outside the office, anyway. Well, since her death, your housekeeper, Bridget, has been forwarding the mail from the house about once a week, and I've been paying the bills from the office." "Well, that's what I asked you to do, Hal." "I hadn't received any mail from Bridget for a couple of weeks. And also, I wanted to get an idea of what things of Julia's you might want to give away, so I came over here. I found something among the papers." "What, Hal?" "Are you sitting down?" "Yes." "Wolf, I found some correspondence with your stockbroker. Did Julia have anything to do with your investments?" "Yes, she had an interest in the market. She read the Wall Street Journal every day, and occasionally she would buy or sell something. I gave the broker a power of attorney so she could do that, but she always checked with me first. I believe she even made me some money." "Maybe so, Wolf, but it's gone now." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Julia sold everything less than a week before she died." Wolf sat down. "Everything?" he asked weakly. "Everything. The stocks, T-bills, those bonds you bought a couple of years ago, and your Keogh and 401k retirement plans. The total value is a little over $3,600,000. "Well, what did she do with the money?" Wolf asked, trying to grasp what Hal was saying. "It went into her bank account first. Then she wire-transferred the whole amount, plus about $30,000 to a bank in the Cayman Islands." $3,600,000? Wolf asked, beginning to get a grip on what had happened to him. "That's right," Hal said. "And that's not all. Just over $1 million of that was from the 2 retirement accounts. That means you're going to have to pay tax on that amount come April 15th. It'll be, say, $350,000. Your total loss is looking like about $4 million, plus tax on whatever profit might have been made on the other stocks." Wolf was breathing deeply, trying to keep a grip on himself. "What do you want me to do?" Hal asked. "Jesus, what can I do, Hal? The money's out of the country and Julia's dead. Is there any way I can get it back?" "I don't know. There's an account number for the Cayman Bank on the wire transfer receipt. I guess we can start there. But the Caymans have a very secretive banking system." "Christ, there must be something we can do." "Wolf, I know this idea won't appeal to you, but I think we ought to call the police." "You're right. That doesn't appeal to me." "I think you have to do it to protect yourself. The first thing the insurance company would want is the police in on this. I want to talk to my lawyer before we do anything." "All right. What do you want me to do here?" "Just take all those statements back to the office and see if you can find out anything else from them. Talk to my broker, too, and see if he has anything to add." Wolf hung up and called Ed Eagle, who agreed with Hal Berger. "I do think you have to get the L.A. police in on this without delay. Call your man back and tell him to scream bloody murder to the cops." "All right, whatever you say." "One good thing about board may not be equal to $4 million. "What's that?" "It'll be the final nail in Julia's coffin, where her character is concerned. It'll make a jury more sympathetic." "You're right," Wolf said. "It isn't equal to $4 million. Ed Eagle rang Barbara Kennerly's bell at 8:30 on New Year's Eve. She greeted him wearing a dress that he could only think of as sensational. It was tight, black, and showed an entertaining amount of cleavage and her tattoo. A diamond choker encircled her neck. "You are beautiful," he said. "So are you," she replied, kissing him. "I love a man in a tuxedo." Barbara produced a full-length mink coat, and Eagle helped her into it. "Something left over from the marriage?" he asked. "I told you," she said. "My husband was a generous man, and he had a brother in the fur business." He opened the door for her. "Just pull it shut and it'll lock itself," Barbara said. She stepped out the door, and as she started down the stairs, Eagle found the night latch button and switched it off. He closed the door firmly and followed Barbara down the stairs. After a sumptuous buffet dinner, there was dancing to a small band, and Eagle was relieved when their host asked to dance with Barbara. "Good timing," he said to the man. "I've got to go to the John anyway." "Take your time," the man said, and Barbara laughed. Eagle headed out of the living room, then left the house by a side door. He got into his car and drove as quickly as he dared, considering the cops were out in force on New Year's Eve. He parked at Barbara's place and let himself into her apartment. She had left a light on, and he pulled down the shades of the living room windows. Eagle wasn't sure what he was looking for, but he immediately found something interesting. When going through the chest of drawers in her bedroom, he came across a gun, a snub-nosed Smith & Wesson .38 caliber revolver, meant for close work. He checked the cylinder. It was loaded. He wiped it and replaced the pistol exactly as he had found it. The books in the bookcase were mostly popular novels and art books, some of them obviously acquired locally. One other book caught his eye because it seemed so out of place. It was called Beautiful Girlhood, and the style of the cover placed it in another era. He opened it and checked the chapter titles. It seemed to be a guide to maintaining virginity. Written on the title page was the name Leah Schlemmer. It must have belonged to her mother, he thought. As he was about to replace the book, his fingers came into contact with something protruding from the pages. He opened the book again to a page where 2 pieces of an old photograph had been inserted. It had apparently been torn in half, but when he tried to put the 2 pieces together, they did not fit. Each of the 2 pieces contained a snapshot of a girl, and judging from a disembodied hand resting on the shoulder of one of them, there had once been another girl between the 2. The hairdos and clothes seemed to place the photograph around the late 60s. The 2 girls might have been twins. He could not tell which one was Barbara. Eagle replaced the photograph in the book and returned it to the bookcase. He stood in the middle of the living room and looked for some other item in the little apartment that might give him further information about Barbara, but there was nothing. He raised the shades in the living room, opened the door,
flipped on the night latch, and closed the door behind him. He drove quickly back, let himself in through the side door, locked it, and returned to the party. "There you are," Barbara said as he took a seat beside her on a cushion before the fireplace.
"Here I am," Eagle said. "I got into a discussion in the kitchen."
The music stopped and there was a drum roll.
"Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends," the host said, "Happy New Year!"
Everybody sang Auld Lang Syne and kissed. Barbara kissed Eagle avidly, then raised her glass and looked him in the eye. "To the new year," she said, "and to new beginnings." Eagle raised his glass.
"New beginnings," he said.
He had the feeling that her new beginning might be cut short, and he hoped he was wrong. On the morning of January 2nd, Wolf was indicted for murder and released in Ed Eagle's custody after posting bail. When they were back in his car, Eagle raised another point.
"Wolf, I want your authorization to hire 2 investigators. I know a good man who can look into Grafton's activities in Los Angeles. Julia's sister gave me the name of a man Grafton knew there, who he might have contacted."
"Fine, go ahead. What's the other investigator for?"
"I want to send a man to the Cayman Islands and see what he can find out from the bank there."
"Aren't those banks very secretive?"
"Yes, but if we can present evidence of a crime in connection with funds they are harboring, they can choose to give us information. I know a guy in Washington who until recently was an investigator for the IRS and who has a lot of experience looking into Cayman accounts. He's a CPA in Virginia now. He'll be expensive, but is damn good."
"All right, go ahead. Keep me posted on these investigations, will you?"
"Sure I will. I know how anxious you are."
"No," Wolf thought as he watched Eagle drive away. "You don't have any idea how anxious." Cupid Dalton sat in the tiny second bedroom of his small apartment in Santa Monica, which served as his office, and worried. He had earned his nickname when he had been on the force because he was plump, pink, and resembled the prize dolls at carnival shooting galleries, and he was worried because he had $4 in the bank and his pension check didn't come for another week. "Please, God," he said aloud, "I need some work." The phone rang. "Dalton Investigations."
"Cupid, it's Ed Eagle. How are you?"
He tried not to sound excited.
"Okay, Ed. You?" "Not bad. I need a guy looked into."
"Okay. Who is he?"
"His name is, or rather was, James Grafton, known as Jimmy, recently known in L.A. as Dan O'Hara. He caught the wrong end of a shotgun around Thanksgiving in Santa Fe."
Cupid wrote down the names. "Never heard of him."
"Armed robber, conman, escapee, murderer. He bounced out of a New York prison earlier this year and ended up in L.A. Apparently sold a screenplay to Warner."
"That's cute. Got anything else?"
"A name. Benny Calabrese, somebody he knew."
"I know him. A sleaze."
"What did you expect?"
"So what do you need on this guy?"
"I want to know every move he made in L.A. and anything else you think might interest me."
"You know my rates."
"Forget rates," Eagle said. "I don't have time for you to chalk up hours and an expense account. This is $5,000 straight, and anything you have to fork over comes out of that. I'll have a messenger there in an hour with cash."
"That would be nice."
It's not a gift, Cupid. It's for results. I want to hear from you tomorrow, and I want to hear a lot.
You got it, Ed.
I better